Okay, Rui. Hello, I hope you're well. So just introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And what does a typical week look like for you?
Hey, I'm Rui. I work in tech. My typical week is a mix of many things. So I do have ADHD. So routine wise is very um, not routiny. I do try to work out. I do my either go to the office or work at home. I try to have other activities throughout the days to keep me engaged. And that's kind of my typical week. And of course, the weekend is completely different. It's a mix of home logistics, meeting friends, doing some other stuff. That's not the same thing as the work days. Before coming here, I think my sleep was in the last few years troublesome, or always had been, but it got slightly worse every year.
Hmm.
And so my mornings were very sluggish. Felt like I was always behind schedule. And so it would this would only come back to normal if I did a very intensive workout. Then my brain kind of comes back. At the same time, I couldn't do workouts in the evening because otherwise my sleep would get delayed by a lot. So I always had to work out really early morning, or if I'm lucky, doing home office or something, I can do lunch workouts, which is also good. Um, and it was never an issue of biology. So I've done uh, two evening or three nights polysomnography at the Charité Hospital here in Berlin. So no sleep apnea, none of the easier to find issues. And I realized it was probably a byproduct of ADHD, some mixed arousal, and that made falling asleep and having energy in the morning harder than usual, or at least for a neurotypical person, harder than a neurotypical person.
Sure.
And that was it. And after I tried to figure out some things on my own, some of them worked better than others, obviously. Some different types of tea, some different types of meditation. Uh, for example, if I wanted to focus on during the day or doing less stuff later, would be to shut down my phone in the post box, so it's harder to find. These sort of stopgaps were, some of them were doing well, some of them not, but they were inconsistent. So it was always a case of mix and match throughout. Um, and I think the outcome of that was for me, career wise, it was complicated because um, in what I do, you need to have a strong context switching. So going from one project to the other, and so that does require me to be more active and the brain functioning throughout the day, balanced. And usually for me, it was always a matter of I need to pick and choose my own places um, based on that. So creating the conditions, and that's not always consistent. And of course, that's not always for 6 or 8 hours of the day. So that became very hard. Also with relationships, I noticed some difference, which is if I'm not fully energized, awakened, it's hard to pay attention to others, um, to do our own stuff internally, of course, but relate with the rest of the world. And historically speaking, I was always known to be the person who falls asleep at parties,
Hmm.
or clubs, and that was also an issue. And I guess as you get older, that becomes more and more of an issue because you have more responsibilities. You want to be, and you also find out more about yourself. So you don't want to be this person who falls asleep in the corner or has to go to sleep at 9 p.m.
How often would you say that was happening? You mentioned a few things there, the falling asleep, but then also It's sort of like feeling not so present, and then also feeling like your brain wasn't functioning like how you needed it to be at work. How often would you say those things were actually happening in the week?
If not daily, almost daily.
Almost daily.
Yes.
Mm.
So out of 7 days a week, 6 were like this.
Wow, okay. Did you have any specific moment where you were like, "Oh, I actually need to, like, get this sorted now?" Is there anything in particular that you can think of?
Um, yes. So for me, it was a matter of I cannot find an easy way out. Like in my understanding of what I understand of sleep and how people work, how ADHD works. Um, Not sure if you can get much better than this. Keep in mind, I already do more than the average human. I do sauna, finish sauna with contrast. That was my way to go if I needed to sleep. Gaining two supplements. Some of them work, some of them don't, but it is what it is. So I already have that. Meditation. I've enrolled in a few of Vipassana 10-day silent retreats, and that does work. But when you come back to real life, that realization goes away slightly. For me, it was something where, okay, I think I tried all the things that seem a natural fit for me. And I think it was also a matter of I don't want to let this slip further.
Mm. What were you worried about most as a result of it slipping further?
That I would not be able to enjoy life as I thought it would be
Mm.
possible.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously we started working together around, like, 12 weeks ago now, and when you first saw about sleep coaching or saw me as a sleep coach, like, what did you think, and were you skeptical about that?
Of course.
What would you say is, like, the main reason you were skeptical?
Um, because in my opinion, I turned almost every rock around to see what was behind it and try left and try right. And for me, out of 100% of things I could have done, I think I've done 99%. I've read through the papers. I listened to podcasts, read books, read Matthew Walker's book many years ago, learned a lot of things. And then for me, some of those things or my expectations also were not matching. So for me, it was weird. Also, of course, when you listen to or hear the word coach, it has a very usually negative connotation at first. And for me, it was. I was skeptical, of course.
Mm, yeah, 100%. And then what do you feel like has been your experience now compared to what you thought it could be like before?
I think now, I think when you work on your own, which is a wonderful thing, I think sometimes you are missing some sparring partner to throw ideas around. And of course, unless your sparring partner is someone who has a similar issue or has a lot of knowledge on the topic, I think it's going to be hard to get an interesting conversation that moves forward. And to me,
Yeah.
I think that was perhaps the biggest discovery, which is I know a lot of things, you know a lot of things. Let's try to get and do something.
Yeah, 100%. It's sort of like working, reverse engineering. Okay, like what's the actual problem in here, and how are we going to solve this? Isn't it?
Yes.
And how did you feel like it was actually kind of working through the process and having our calls? How did you find actually going through that?
So I think in the first call I was highly skeptical, and then the following ones were I guess that skepticism went down. So for me, it was easy to work with. So some of the things are perhaps more obvious than others. I guess for everyone, everyone has its own more obvious things.
Mhm,
For me, was I know some of that. I'm willing to do that again. Maybe in the perhaps a different. Maybe we switch some variable here and there. And then as you go, because you also have feedback and you track things, you figure out also what has been working, what not, what needs to get out, what needs to get in, and that's also very helpful. And I think I doing that alone would be much harder.
definitely. I mean, the good thing was as well that you mentioned is we actually were able to track this and see what was working and what wasn't, and then identify, okay, like if we do this, we're gonna have a better outcome. I remember when we started, your sleep and energy was around like a 6 out of 10. You would say it was. Is that right? It was around 6 out of
Yes,
10
on a good day, yes.
on a good day. And how
7 on
low
a
would
good,
you?
very good day.
Yeah,
Low, mm, 4-ish. So if I can still sleep 6 hours, not feeling too much relaxation, that would be like a 4 the next day. So like running a marathon every morning when you wake up. I think that's
yeah.
my equivalence.
Mm. And then it was like a few weeks ago we had a big breakthrough, right? Can you just talk through that and how you actually felt and what the difference was?
Yeah. Um. So for me, it was a weird mix of, or a different mix of having more energy when waking up and throughout the day. So more consistency, more stability, which is good. So not only within the day, but across days. That to me was a great finding. And also because of that, or at the same time, I'd argue, sleep also became more consistent. So more similar wake up and falling asleep hours. Um, Sleep duration, because that's also more consistent. And I think that created a good feedback loop where one feeds the other. So more energy during the day, also easier to shut down at night, also easier to get up in the morning. That was a very good, a very interesting experience.
Mm. And being able to do those things, having more energy, getting up easier, and being able to shut down and fall asleep with more ease. How would you say that improved, your day-to-day activities?
I think it improved by a lot, because I think I think to do anything you need two things, right? You need the right level of energy and the right level of focus
Mm,
or presence. And if you don't have the right level of energy, it's very hard to keep focus. And for me, that solved that part, which is a good, something very good to be solved.
100%. The energy and focus are like your two foundations of performance that obviously allow you to perform at your best. Can you think of any specific situations, a few weeks ago when you know, we really had that breakthrough of your sleep and then we had the increased energy. Can you think of any specific situations where you were like, "Oh, like this is actually like really different?"
Um, I think it would be hard to pinpoint one exact point in time. Um, for me, I think it's also a mix of sleeping better, and other aspects of my life also being better. So I think one, of course, pulls the other. Um, but compared to situations I had before where I had good sleep, um, it did not require me to be extremely exhausted or something like this. When I say extremely exhausted, I mean I do have some stories, and usually they involve me being mentally depleted. My body is super tired. Some of them involve sauna, and that was it felt like my battery had to go to zero everywhere. My brain stops working. Then if it stops working, then shuts down, just relaxes. And then getting those moments in my life, I've had them maybe 4 times in the last 10 years. And of course, one wants it to be more frequent.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, what we're working on now is trying to make those good days a lot more consistent. And obviously, you mentioned before that the main things that this was actually affecting was obviously relationships not being present, and then also um, sort of your brain capacity. So, how much difference do you feel like this is going to make going forwards? You know, not having to experiencing those things and actually having more, you know, brain function, more energy, more focus, and being more present.
Um, I think it accrues throughout your day to day. So for me, um, as a person with ADHD, the first thing one should be looking is how good is the quality of my sleep. Because if I sleep slightly less, my focus gets impacted. I get distracted way easier, even if I take or not take medication. And if you take medication and you don't sleep well, that's also affects a lot how the medication works. So for me in particular, has had that variable, that sleep variable has had a much better impact. So I know plenty of people who go by 6 hours per day, they are fine. For me, that threshold is perhaps 8 hours to be functioning as a regular person, not great, but regular. And to get to that point or get good quality and nice duration, for me always has had been an issue. So of course,
100%.
when you translate this to day, whether it's work, whether it's sporting activities, whether it's relationships, if your focus is not in the right place at the right time, you'll suffer somehow, right? You'll miss details, you'll miss nuances with someone, family, friends, etc., partners, and that also creates more friction as you go. So how's like it's not only that you don't have the energy, it's also the fact that you don't have the energy creates some negative things throughout the day, and they also accumulate, right? You don't want to be the person who's always down on energy. Let's do something. Let's talk about this, and your brain as doesn't have the ability to function at the right level for that situation.
Yeah, it's like not having the capacity to deal with the things that you need to sort of deal with. And I remember on one of our calls a few weeks back, you said that you had the best sleep you'd had in 2 years. Was that something that you were expecting when you came into this?
Eventually, yes. I mean, either there are two options. Either it doesn't work.
Mm,
That's very uh, possible.
mhm.
Or if it does, then I'm guessing I'm going to sleep better at some point.
Yeah,
So I did not know it could be. Is it at week 2, week 6? I do not know, but I would expect at some point I would sleep at least slightly better.
yeah. I believe that breakthrough for you was around week 9, that really good week.
Could be, yes.
Yeah. But obviously it was slowly getting better, and then we actually had the, you know, best night of sleep ever in 2 years, and then obviously the energy at an 8 out of 10 in correlation to that. So yeah, really fantastic and amazing results, and something that we've obviously worked on throughout this whole time and will continue to increase and make more consistent as well. Um, and I mean, who would you actually recommend my service to?
Hmm. I think you could have two types of people. So you can have people who have short-term sleep issues, right? Something changed and the sleep doesn't go back, which is not my case. And you could have other people who have been or got used to some sleep quality which is not great. I think both of those are applicable. In my case, it's the latter. And not only that, I think sometimes knowing about sleep takes quite a while. I've been doing this for the past, I don't know, 7 years, try to figure out what can work and what not for sleep. Um, so whether you are someone who has read all the books and read papers and tried a lot of things, I would argue, or just a starter, I think in both of these like these four quadrants, I think, or in all of these four quadrants, that would be interesting.
100%. I think you can only read Why We Sleep so many times before you don't really learn anything else. And it comes down to not only like the knowledge, but actually like application of that. Because I find that a lot of people are kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark, and it's like, try this, try this, try this. And you know, you were doing that admittedly quite a lot, right? Before coming onto this, trying so many things, and you were getting some benefit from that. But it's like, you're gonna make some improvements, but how can we make the most improvement? And usually that just comes from, okay, let's identify one or two things that actually will improve the root problem and focus on that, because then you'll get like the biggest benefit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks for speaking today, and yeah, we'll speak more.
Thank you.